He, a solitary tycoon, harbors a secret love for the maid. She, kind-hearted but tormented by a secret, feels unworthy. Julian watches her secretly for months. In a moment of forced intimacy, Clara, overwhelmed by love and burdened by her secret, pleads, "Please, Mr. Thorne, forget me. I'm just the maid. You deserve better. I have a burden you can't possibly bear." The words strike Julian deeply. He can no longer keep his secret and reveals that there's no burden he can't and wouldn't carry for her. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. Clara Miller adjusted her navy blue uniform for the third time that morning, checking if every fold was perfect before knocking on the door of the penthouse suite. At 30, she had learned that invisibility was her greatest ally at the Plaza Hotel. Being discreet, efficient, and almost ghost-like were the qualities that kept her employed in New York City's most luxurious establishment. "Come in," came the deep voice from inside the suite. Clara took a deep breath. She knew that Julian Thorne, the CEO of the international hotel chain, had been staying there for 3 weeks, personally overseeing the hotel's renovations. At 42, he was a legend in the hospitality industry, a man who had transformed a small family business into an empire spanning 5 continents. But for Clara, he was just another VIP guest who preferred not to be disturbed. She pushed the cleaning cart into the suite, keeping her eyes lowered. The apartment was a spectacle of Italian marble and panoramic views of Central Park. But Clara had seen enough luxury not to be impressed anymore. Her attention was focused on finishing the work quickly and going home, where her mother, Donna Miller, was waiting for another physical therapy session. Julian watched the maid enter silently, as he had done for the past few days. There was something about her that intrigued him, an unwavering dignity that contrasted with the humility of her position. She worked with an almost artistic precision, rearranging every detail as if she were taking care of her own home. She never looked at him directly, but he had caught glimpses of her subtly smiling as she arranged the flowers or folded the towels with unnecessary affection. "Excuse me," Julian said, closing his laptop. "I'm leaving for a meeting. Feel free to work." Clara simply nodded without raising her eyes. "Thank you, sir." He hesitated at the door. For years, Julian had only associated with women of his social class, executives, heiresses, socialites who understood the rules of his world. But in recent months, since personally overseeing operations in New York, he felt suffocated by that life. The recent death of his father had left deep scars, reminding him of how he had sacrificed genuine relationships in the name of business. Clara continued her work, oblivious to the CEO's thoughts. Her mind was occupied with more immediate concerns. The cost of her mother's physical therapy had increased again, and she would need to work overtime. Her younger siblings, Ryan and Ashley, depended entirely on her salary since Donna Miller's multiple sclerosis had worsened. It was when she bent down to pick up a piece of paper that had fallen behind the desk that disaster struck. The weight of her worries, the sleepless nights, and the irregular meals of the last few months took their toll. Clara felt her vision darken and the world spin around her. Julian, who had not yet left the suite, saw her stagger and rushed to support her before she fell. The soft lavender scent of her hair enveloped him as he held her in his arms. For a moment, Clara opened her eyes and found his worried gaze so close that she could see the small lines around his brown eyes. "Are you all right?" Julian asked, his voice filled with a genuine concern that surprised her. Clara tried to pull away, her face burning with shame. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne. I just need a glass of water. It won't happen again." But Julian didn't let go immediately. There was something in the vulnerability of that moment that broke down all the barriers he had built around himself. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely connected to another person. "When was the last time you ate?" he asked, helping her sit down in the armchair. Clara looked away, embarrassed. "I'm fine, sir. Please don't worry about me. But Julian had already decided that he wouldn't let it go. He had recognized in her eyes the same exhaustion that he carried himself, although for completely different reasons. At that moment, something fundamental changed between them, creating a connection that neither of them was prepared to face. Julian cancelled his meeting. For the first time in years, business took a back seat as he watched Clara regain color in her face after drinking a glass of orange juice that he had ordered from room service. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne," she said, getting up carefully. "I need to get back to work." "No." His voice came out firmer than he intended. "You're going to rest today. I'll talk to the supervisor." Clara felt panic rise in her throat. "Please, no, I need this job. If Miss Davis finds out that I fainted during work..." The genuine worry in her eyes touched something deep in Julian. "Then tell me what's going on." For a moment, Clara hesitated. There was something in his tone that was different from the cold authority of the other executives she knew. But reality brought her back. She was just a maid, and he, one of the most powerful men in the country. That moment of caring was just fleeting compassion. "It's nothing you need to know," she murmured, trying to grab the cleaning cart. Julian blocked her path gently. "Clara." The fact that he knew her name made her stop, surprised. She finally looked at him, and for the first time, Julian saw the strength that hid behind those tired eyes. It was the same determination that he recognized in himself, but tempered by a kindness that he had long lost. "My mother is sick," she admitted, the words coming out faster than she wanted. "Multiple sclerosis. The treatments are expensive, and I need to work. I'm sorry for causing this situation." Julian felt something clench in his chest. He recognized in Clara's silent sacrifice echoes of his own journey when he had taken over the family business after his father's death, carrying alone the weight of hundreds of employees and their families. "You don't need to apologize for taking care of those you love," he said, his voice softer. The comment caught them both off guard. For an instant, the social barriers seemed to disappear, and they saw themselves simply as two people who understood the weight of responsibility. Clara quickly looked away, remembering where she was. "You're very kind, but I really need to get back to work." In the following days, a strange dance began between them. Julian found excuses to be in the suite when Clara arrived for cleaning. Small gestures became routine. He left an extra coffee on the table. She organized his papers with special care. Brief conversations about the weather turned into comments about the books he left open, about the flowers she arranged with such care. Clara tried to resist the attraction she felt growing. She had caught Julian's lingering looks, the way his voice changed when he spoke to her. But the reality was relentless. She was a maid with a sick family to support, and he was Julian Thorne, a man who dated socialites and appeared on magazine covers. Julian, in turn, found himself thinking about Clara outside of work. The simplicity of their conversations, the way she smiled when he asked about her siblings, the dignity with which she carried her hardships. All of this contrasted drastically with the artificial world in which he lived. The situation reached a boiling point on Friday when Julian found her crying quietly while folding the bed linens. She tried to hide it, but he had seen the tears. "What happened?" he asked, approaching against all protocols. Clara wiped her face quickly. "Nothing, sir, sorry." "Clara," he said again, and there was something in his voice that made her stop. "Tell me." "The insurance denied my mother's physical therapy request," the words came out in a whisper, "and I don't know what to do anymore." Julian felt a dull anger against a system that allowed someone like Clara to carry so much alone. Without thinking about the consequences, he said, "I can help." Clara looked up, alarmed. "No, Mr. Thorne, I can't accept." "Why not?" "Because..." She hesitated, the words stuck in her throat. How to explain that accepting his help would be admitting the feelings that were growing inside her? How to say that it was already difficult enough to work near him without constantly remembering the impossibility of anything between them? "Because it would be inappropriate," she finished. The answer hit Julian like a slap. Of course it would be inappropriate. He was the CEO. She was an employee. There were codes, hierarchies, an entire world separating them. But for the first time in his life, he wanted to break all those rules. "I understand," he said, taking a step back. Clara finished her work in silence, aware of the tension that hung in the air. When she was about to leave, Julian spoke again. "Clara, I'm traveling to Los Angeles on Monday. When I get back, I'd like to talk to you about a job offer." She turned around, confused. "Offer? I need someone trustworthy to oversee the room renovations, someone who understands the importance of details. The salary would be substantially better." Clara felt her heart race. It was an incredible opportunity, but also dangerous. Working closer to Julian would be a constant temptation. "Think about what this would mean for your family," he added, seeing her hesitation. And that was exactly what made her agree, even knowing that she was putting herself in an even more complicated situation. Clara's new position as renovation supervisor put her in a situation she hadn't anticipated. Now, she needed to meet daily with Julian to discuss project details, present progress reports, and make decisions that would affect millions of dollars in investments. "The marble you chose for the bathrooms doesn't align with the hotel's sustainable proposal," Clara said during the first meeting, her hands trembling slightly as she flipped through the samples. "Maybe we could consider a domestic alternative that—" Julian stopped taking notes and looked at her, impressed. In the 3 days since she had taken on the new role, Clara had demonstrated a keen eye for details that his specialized consultants had missed. "Continue," he encouraged, noticing how she shrank whenever she expressed an opinion. "It's just, well, working here for 2 years, I've observed what guests really value. It's not just luxury, it's authenticity. They want to feel like they're experiencing the real America." Over the following weeks, the meetings stretched beyond the scheduled time. Julian discovered that Clara had an intuitive understanding of hospitality that came from years of silently observing the details that made a difference. She knew the names of the regular guests, their preferences, even the wedding anniversaries of some. "How do you know all this?" Julian asked one afternoon, after Clara suggested a change to the layout of the reception area based on customer movement patterns. Clara blushed slightly. I've always paid attention. Even when you're invisible, you learn a lot about people when they don't know you're watching." "You've never been invisible," Julian said, the words coming out before he could censor them. The silence that followed was filled with a tension that they both pretended not to feel. Clara lowered her eyes to the papers, but Julian could see the blush spreading across her neck. It was during one of these extended meetings that Clara's phone rang. She apologized, but Julian noticed the immediate change in her expression when she answered. "Ryan, calm down. Take a deep breath. What happened to Mom?" Julian saw Clara pale as she spoke to her younger brother. When she hung up, her hands were visibly shaking. "I need to go home," she said, getting up quickly. "My mother had a crisis." "I'll go with you," Julian responded instinctively. "No!" Clara's response was more abrupt than she intended. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne, but this is a personal matter." "Clara, you're visibly upset. You shouldn't drive in this condition." She hesitated, torn between the urgent need to get home and the fear of exposing Julian to the reality of her life. Finally, concern for her mother won. During the drive to the suburb of Queens, Julian watched Clara fight back tears. The difference between the luxury of the plaza and the simplicity of the neighborhood where she lived was stark, but he said nothing. Clara's apartment was small but impeccably clean. Ryan, 17, greeted them at the door with eyes red with worry. "She started shaking during lunch and then couldn't speak properly," he explained quickly. Julian followed Clara to the bedroom where Donna Miller was lying, clearly frail but conscious. The older woman looked at Julian with curiosity, but Clara hurried to introduce him only as her boss. "Mom, how are you feeling?" Clara asked, holding the woman's hand. "Better now that you're here, my dear. But who is this handsome young man who came with you?" Clara felt her face burn. "Mom!" Julian approached the bed with a gentleness that surprised Clara. "Nice to meet you, Donna Miller. I'm Julian. I work with your daughter." "Ah, so you know how special she is," the older woman said, her eyes shining. "My Clara has always been different. Since she was little, she took care of everyone. When her father died—" "Mom," Clara interrupted quickly, "you need to rest." But Julian had caught the tension in Clara's voice. There was something there that she didn't want him to know. Later, while Clara talked with Ashley in the kitchen about her mother's medications, Julian had a revealing conversation with Ryan. "Clara has made a lot of sacrifices for us," the young man said, looking at his sister with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "She had a scholarship to study architecture at Columbia, you know, but when Dad died and Mom got sick—" Julian felt something tighten in his chest. "She dropped out of college?" "In her senior year," confirmed Ryan. "Said family was more important than any degree. She's been working as a maid for 2 years, but before that she did odd jobs in decoration. She was very talented." When Clara returned to the living room, she found Julian silent, lost in thought. There was something different in the way he looked at her now, a deeper understanding that made her feel exposed. "Shall we go?" she asked, avoiding his gaze. During the drive back, the silence was heavy. Finally, Julian spoke. "Why did you never tell me about architecture?" Clara closed her eyes. She knew Ryan had spoken. "Because it doesn't matter anymore." "Of course it matters. Your suggestions for the renovations make a lot more sense now." "Julian," she began, then stopped, realizing that she had used his name for the first time. "You sacrificed your future for your family," he said softly. "That's not a small thing, Clara." "Everyone makes choices," she replied, her voice tense. "Some people choose success, others choose family." The hint did not go unnoticed by Julian. He knew his reputation, the man who never had a serious relationship, who prioritized business above all else. "What if I told you that you could have both?" he asked, stopping the car in front of the hotel. Clara finally looked at him, and Julian saw fear in her eyes. "Some doors, when closed, do not open again. Not all of them," he said, his voice filled with a promise that neither of them was ready to face. When Clara got out of the car, both knew that something had changed irreversibly between them. The secret of her past was exposed, and with it, a mutual understanding that made the attraction between them even more dangerous. The Thorn Hotels Network's charity event was happening in 3 days, and Clara found herself coordinating the final details of the decoration in the main ballroom. It was almost midnight when Julian found her still working, personally adjusting each floral arrangement. "Clara, you should have gone home hours ago," he said, loosening his tie after a long day of meetings. "I want everything to be perfect," she replied without looking up from the flowers. "It's the first time I've coordinated an event of this magnitude." Julian watched her meticulous dedication, the way she touched each petal with care, as if they were works of art. "It's beautiful, better than any professional decorator would do." The sincere praise made Clara stop. There was something in his voice, an admiration that went beyond the professional. When she turned around, she found Julian closer than she expected. "I should go," she murmured, but didn't move. "You should," he agreed, also without moving away. The moment was interrupted by Clara's cell phone ringing insistently. It was Ashley, and her voice was desperate. "Clara!" Mom fainted again, but this time it was different. "The ambulance is coming. We're going to New York Presbyterian Hospital." Clara dropped the phone, her face losing all color. Julian supported her before she could stagger. "What happened?" "My mother, hospital." Clara could barely form coherent sentences. Without hesitating, Julian grabbed his car keys. "Let's go." The drive to the hospital was desperate. Clara trembled uncontrollably, muttering prayers, as Julian drove with an urgency that reflected his own desperation to see her suffer. At the hospital, they found Ryan and Ashley in the waiting room, hugging and crying. The diagnosis was serious. Donna Miller had suffered a serious complication and needed immediate surgery, but the procedure would cost over $50,000. "The insurance doesn't cover this type of surgery," explained the doctor. "We need approval to proceed." Clara felt the world collapse. Even with the new salary, it was impossible to get that amount of money in time. "Doctor," Julian interrupted, "arrange everything that is necessary. I'll cover the costs." "No!" Clara turned to him, desperate. "Julian, you can't." "I can't accept." "It's not a matter of can or cannot accept," he said firmly. "It's about saving your mother's life. I can't be indebted to you in this way." Clara was crying now. "You don't understand what that means." Julian held her by the shoulders, forcing her to look him in the eyes. "What I understand is that the woman you love more than anything needs help, and I have the means to give it. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be." "More complicated?" She laughed bitterly. "Julian, $50,000. Even working for you for the rest of my life, I could never pay it off." "Then don't pay," he said simply. The answer left Clara in shock. "What do you mean?" "You owe me nothing, Clara. You never have." Ashley and Ryan watched the exchange in silence, realizing that there was something much deeper happening between the two than a simple professional relationship. The next 6 hours were the longest in Clara's life. Julian did not leave the hospital for a moment, staying by her side throughout the surgery. He brought coffee, talked to her siblings to distract them, and when Clara finally broke down from exhaustion and fear, it was in his arms that she found comfort. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, leaning on his shoulder in the waiting room chair. Julian hesitated. For the first time in his life, he felt vulnerable enough to tell the truth. "Because when I see you fight so hard for those you love, I realize what I've been missing all these years, prioritizing only business. You make me want to be a better man." Clara looked up at him, seeing a sincerity that scared her. "Julian, when my father died," he continued, "I promised myself that I would never let feelings interfere with business again, that I would never be vulnerable enough to be hurt. But you make me question all those choices." Before Clara could respond, the doctor appeared with news. The surgery had been a success. In the relief of the moment, Clara threw herself into Julian's arms without thinking about the consequences. He hugged her tightly, burying his face in her hair, and for an instant they forgot where they were and who they were. It was Ashley who noticed first, the flash of a camera. A paparazzo had followed Julian to the hospital, always looking for scandals involving the most coveted billionaire bachelor in the country. "Shit," Julian muttered, but didn't release Clara immediately. Clara pulled away, realizing the gravity of the situation. "What does this mean?" Julian knew exactly what it meant. By the end of the day, the photos would be on every gossip website in the country. The CEO of Thorn Hotels hugging an employee in a public hospital would be the kind of scandal that his family and shareholders would not tolerate. "It means our life just got a lot more complicated," he admitted. When they left the hospital at 6 in the morning, certain that Donna Miller was out of danger, they both knew that they had crossed a line from which there was no return. What had started as mutual attraction had become something much more dangerous. A feeling that could destroy both of their careers and expose Clara to a world for which she was not prepared. Worse still, Julian knew that his mother, Eleanor Thorne, a woman who controlled the social aspects of the family with an iron fist, would not let the scandal that was about to explode go unnoticed. The war was just beginning. The photos plastered the covers of the leading gossip websites even before Clara got home. Billionaire CEO in forbidden romance with employee, Julian Thorne and the secret love in the hospital, the tycoon and the American Cinderella. The headlines were increasingly sensationalist, and social media was already buzzing with speculation. Clara discovered the extent of the scandal when she arrived at the hotel the next morning and found a crowd of reporters at the entrance. She managed to enter through the back, but knew it was only a matter of time before she was cornered. "I need to talk to you," Julian said when she entered his office, his face tense. Before Clara could answer, the secretary announced on the intercom, "Mr. Thorne, your mother is here." Eleanor Thorne entered the office like an elegant storm. At 65, she was an imposing woman, dressed in Chanel from head to toe, with a look that could freeze hell over. Her gaze swept Clara from head to toe with barely disguised disdain. "So this is the person who is causing so much commotion," said Eleanor, her voice cutting like ice. "Clara Miller, is it? Ex-maid, troubled family, lives in Queens." Clara felt her blood run cold. "How do you know?" "Darling," Eleanor smiled coldly. "When my son gets involved in scandals, I find out, especially when it involves employees who clearly have ulterior motives." "Mom!" Julian stood up abruptly. "Don't talk to her like that." "Julian, have you completely lost your mind?" Eleanor turned to her son. "Your fiancée is arriving from London today. Isabella Montgomery, remember, the daughter of our main European investor, to whom you have been engaged for 2 years. Clara felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "Fiancée?" Julian paled. "Clara, I can explain." "Of course you can," Eleanor interrupted, pleased with the impact of her words. "It's a business engagement, as it always has been. Isabella knows the rules, accepts the discreet affairs. But this," she gestured towards the headlines on the tablet, "this is unacceptable." "I need to go," Clara murmured, heading for the door. "Wait." Julian tried to stop her, but she dodged him. "Better this way," said Eleanor when Clara left. "Now we can solve this problem civilly." Clara ran to the nearest bathroom and locked the door, trying to process what she had just discovered. Julian had been engaged for 2 years. Everything that had happened between them, the conversations, the looks, the intimate moments, it had all been a lie. She was wiping away tears when she heard female voices outside. "Did you see the pictures? The new Thorne's protégé?" "Please, Marcia, we all know how these rich men are. They always have their fun with the employees." Clara recognized the voice of the supervisor and other colleagues. "What impresses me is her nerve," Marcia continued, "pretending to be wholly hardworking and all the time cozying up to the boss. $50,000 for her mother, did you hear? Imagine what she did to get that money." The words cut Clara like razors. She knew the malicious comments were just the beginning. When she finally left the bathroom, she was intercepted by a well-dressed man she didn't know. "Miss Miller, my name is Richard Evans, attorney for the Thorne family. I need to speak with you." They went to an empty meeting room, where Richard opened a folder with documents. "The family is willing to be generous," he began. $100,000 for you and your family, plus a recommendation for any hotel in the network, in any city you wish, far from New York, obviously. Clara looked at the already completed check. "In exchange for what?" "You sign this confidentiality agreement, confirm that there was no intimate relationship with Mr. Thorne, and leave New York. Discreetly. And if I don't accept?" Richard smiled coldly. "Miss Miller, you have a sick mother, dependent siblings, and now a questionable reputation. The media can be very cruel, especially when they discover embarrassing details about someone's past." "What details?" "Oh, you know. The fact that your father died in debt to loan sharks, the threats your family received, the way you managed to pay off those debts working in night establishments before getting the job at the hotel." Clara felt the world spin. It was a lie, but she knew that in the world of gossip, the truth was irrelevant. "You have 24 hours to decide," Richard said, standing up. "Mr. Thorne's wedding to Miss Montgomery will be announced tomorrow night at the engagement party. It would be embarrassing if there were any distractions." When he left, Clara was alone with the check and the contract. She knew that Eleanor Thorne had orchestrated everything perfectly, a trap that would force her to disappear from Julian's life forever. That night, Julian tried to call her several times, but Clara didn't answer. She spent hours on her apartment balcony, looking at the check that could solve all her family's financial problems. But that would cost her dignity and any chance of a future with the man she had learned to love. Ryan approached, worried. "Clara, what happened? You've been crying since you got home." Sometimes, Ryan, she said, her voice choked with emotion, we discover that some doors should never have been opened and that some dreams are too impossible to come true. At the hotel, Julian confronted his mother, but she had already left. He found only a note on his desk. The engagement party is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Isabella is eager to see you. Don't disappoint me again. Mom, they both spent the night awake, knowing that dawn would bring a decision that would change their lives forever. Clara arrived at the hotel the next morning, with the signed contract and the check folded in her uniform pocket. She had made her decision during the early hours, watching her mother sleep peacefully after the surgery that Julian had paid for. She couldn't be selfish. Her family needed that money, and she didn't have the right to destroy his life for an impossible love. She found Julian in his office, visibly distraught. He hadn't slept, and when he saw her enter, he stood up immediately. Clara, thank God, we need to talk. About the engagement, about everything. You don't need to explain anything, she interrupted, placing the envelope on his desk. I came to resign. Julian looked at the envelope uncomprehendingly. What are you talking about? I signed the agreement. Your family is right. This was all a mistake from the beginning. What agreement? His voice became dangerously low. Clara avoided his gaze. Your mother's lawyer contacted me yesterday. They were very generous. Julian opened the envelope with trembling hands, his eyes darkening with each line he read. Clara, tell me you didn't sign this. It's already done, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. It's better this way for all of us. Better? Julian threw the papers on the table forcefully. You think it's better to let me marry a woman I don't love while you disappear with a bribe from my mother? It's not a bribe. It's a practical solution. You have responsibilities, Julian. Your business, your family, your fiancé. Isabella is not my fiancé, he exploded. It's a business arrangement that I intend to undo. I thought you knew that. Clara finally looked at him, and Julian saw that she had been crying. How could I know? You never told me about her. Because it didn't matter. Because since you came into my life, nothing else matters besides you. The words hung in the air between them, charged with a truth that they had both avoided admitting. Clara felt her heart break. Julian, stop. Please, don't make this harder. Harder? He approached her, desperate. Clara, I love you. Does that mean nothing to you? The words she had longed to hear now seemed like torture. It means everything, she admitted, the tears finally escaping. And that's exactly why I need to leave. That doesn't make sense. It does. Look at us, Julian. Look at this situation. Your family hates me. The media is destroying my reputation. Your employees think I'm a gold digger, and they're not completely wrong. How can you say that? Because it's true, she shouted, all her pain overflowing. I'm a maid who fell in love with the billionaire boss. It's exactly the cliché that everyone is thinking. And your mother is right about one thing. I will destroy your life. Julian tried to approach, but she backed away. Clara, you have an empire to run, a name to protect. And I have a family that needs to be supported, and a mother who almost died because I didn't have the money to save her. But now you do. We can solve this together. With your money, she said bitterly. Always with your money. Don't you see how that makes me feel small, insignificant? The door opened abruptly, and Isabella Montgomery entered like a hurricane. She was a stunning woman, blonde, elegant, everything Clara wasn't. Behind her came Eleanor Thorne, smiling with satisfaction. Julian, darling. Isabella reached out to kiss him on the cheek, completely ignoring Clara. I can't wait for the party tonight. My dress is divine. Isabella, it's not a good time, Julian said tensely. Nonsense, Eleanor interjected. Miss Miller was just leaving. Weren't you, dear? Eleanor's look was a silent threat. Clara realized that if she didn't leave at that moment, Eleanor would fulfill her promises about destroying her reputation and that of her family. Yes, Clara murmured. I was just leaving. Clara, no. Julian tried to stop her, but Isabella clung to his arm possessively. Julian, who is this person? Why does she look so upset? Clara looked at the scene. Julian surrounded by his real world, the perfect fiancé by his side, the controlling mother watching every move. And she was there, out of place, an intruder in a universe where she should never have entered. "Goodbye, Julian," she said softly. "Clara, wait." He tried to go after her, but Isabella held him tightly. "Julian, you're being rude to me," she pouted. "I've been here for 5 minutes and you haven't even greeted me properly." Eleanor discreetly blocked Julian's path. "Son, let her go. It's better this way." Clara ran through the hotel corridors for the last time, the tears blurring her vision. The employees moved away as she passed, some whispering, others just looking with pity or disdain. At the reception, she found Marcia waiting for her with a box. "Your things from the locker," said the supervisor coldly. "I hope it was worth it." Clara took the box and left the plaza without looking back. On the sidewalk, the paparazzi were still waiting for her. "Clara, how does it feel to be replaced by the rich fiancé? What do you have to say about the rumors of the payoff? Is it true that you seduced the boss to get money for your family?" She ran to the bus stop, pursued by the cameras and the cruel questions. On the crowded bus back home, she opened the newspaper that someone had left on the seat. The first page featured a photo of her and Julian at the hospital, with the headline, "Romance Over, Tycoon Returns to Billionaire Fiancé." The article detailed how the affair had ended, speculating about payments made and agreements signed. They had turned her love story into a sordid scandal. At home, she found Ryan and Ashley waiting for her with worried expressions. "Clara, what's going on? The neighbors are talking, people are calling here, asking horrible things." She showed them the check. "We'll be able to pay for all of Mom's treatments, and then some." "But at what cost?" asked Ashley, seeing her sister's state. Clara didn't answer. She went up to her room and locked herself in, finally allowing all the pain to overflow. She had lost the man she loved, her job, her dignity, and worst of all, she knew that she had hurt Julian deeply. That night, while Julian's engagement party was taking place at the most luxurious hotel in the city, Clara remained in her room in Queens, looking out the window at the distant lights of Manhattan. She knew he would be there, wearing the tuxedo she so admired, smiling for the cameras next to Isabella, pretending that she had never existed. Their love had been real, but the world around them had taken it upon itself to destroy it. And for the first time in her life, Clara wondered if some love stories really didn't have a happy ending. 2 weeks had passed since Clara had left the hotel, and her life had become a public hell. The tabloids couldn't get enough of the story. Each day brought new speculation, an old photo of her leaving work, or rumors about the exact amount of the settlement she had received. It was Ashley who brought the morning newspaper with the news that changed everything. "Clara, you need to see this," she said, entering the room where her sister had remained reclusive for days. The headline screamed, "Engagement called off. Julian Thorne breaks up with European heiress." The article detailed how Julian had interrupted his own engagement party, publicly declaring that he would not marry Isabella Montgomery. Clara felt her heart race, but she forced herself to maintain her composure. "This doesn't change anything." "Doesn't change." Ashley sat on the bed. "Clara, don't you see? He chose you. He didn't choose me. He just rejected the life that his family planned for him. That's different." But inside, Clara was in turmoil. Part of her wanted to run back to the hotel, look for Julian, say that she had made a mistake. The other part, more rational, knew that the real problems remained. They still came from completely different worlds, and the social pressure would be relentless. It was Ryan who brought the information that would change everything. "Clara, there's a woman here wanting to talk to you. She says she's an investigative journalist." Melissa Hayes was a respected reporter from a reputable newspaper known for exposing corruption and injustices. She sat in Clara's small living room with a folder full of documents. "Miss Miller, I'm investigating abusive practices by the Thorne family against employees. Your case caught my attention, but I discovered that you are not the first." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" In the past 5 years, at least 7 female employees have been fired or relocated after rumors of closeness to Julian Thorne. All received generous confidentiality agreements, all signed documents similar to yours. Melissa opened the folder, showing copies of contracts. Eleanor Thorne has a well-established system. She monitors her son, identifies any woman who might represent a threat to the family's status, and eliminates them from his life through blackmail, bribery, or intimidation. Clara examined the documents, recognizing the same legal language from her own contract. But if this is true, why does Julian allow it? Because he doesn't know, Melissa replied. Eleanor is very careful. She acts behind his back, creating situations that make it seem like the women are rejecting him or using him for money. Julian believes that he can't maintain relationships because people are only interested in his fortune. The revelation hit Clara like lightning. So the others were also manipulated just like you. Eleanor is a master at exploiting insecurities and fears. She knew exactly which buttons to push in your case. Your family, your social status, your need for money for your mother. Clara stood up, pacing the small room as she processed the information. Why are you telling me this? Because this time it was different, Melissa smiled. Julian didn't accept it passively. He's investigating on his own, questioning things he had never questioned before, and he discovered some uncomfortable truths about his mother. What kind of truths? Melissa hesitated. That he needs to tell you personally, but I can say that Eleanor Thorne is not the grieving widow she pretends to be. There are secrets in the family that she would kill to protect. Clara felt a mixture of hope and fear. What do you want from me? Your help to expose this system. Other women are suffering the same way you suffered. One of them attempted suicide last month because she couldn't handle the public humiliation orchestrated by Eleanor. The journalist showed a photo. A young woman in her early 20s, visibly fragile. Patricia was Julian's personal assistant for 2 years. Eleanor spread rumors that she was stealing from the company. The girl lost not only her job, but any chance of working in the hospitality industry again. Clara felt anger growing in her chest. How can we stop her? First, we need to break the confidentiality agreement you signed. Then, convince the other victims to speak. And finally, Melissa made a dramatic pause. We need Julian to know the whole truth. He won't see me after what happened. He will, a familiar voice said from the door. Clara turned around, surprised to see Ryan accompanied by a well-dressed man she recognized. It was Charles, Julian's personal driver. Charles? She asked, confused. Miss Clara, Mr. Julian has been looking for you for 2 weeks. He found out about the agreement that your mother forced you to sign, and he's furious. How did he find out? Charles smiled sadly. Because when a man is truly in love, he doesn't give up easily. He hired investigators, audited all the payments made by the family, questioned employees. Mrs. Eleanor made a mistake. She underestimated how much her son loves you. Melissa stood up, putting away the documents. Clara, Julian is planning to confront his mother publicly, but he needs concrete evidence, and he needs to know that you are also willing to fight. Where is he now? Clara asked, feeling determination grow within her. He's at the office, preparing a press conference for tomorrow. He's going to resign as CEO if necessary, but he won't allow Eleanor to continue controlling his life. Clara looked at Ryan and Ashley, who were watching her expectantly. Then she looked at Melissa, who represented the chance to do justice, not only for her, but for all the women that Eleanor had harmed. What do I need to do? Melissa smiled. First, we need to nullify that confidentiality agreement. Then, you need to be prepared for a war. Eleanor Thorne won't give up without a fight, and she has resources that we can't even imagine. What if she carries out the threat she made about my family? That's where Julian comes in, Charles interjected. He has as much power as his mother, Clara, and now he knows how to use it to protect those he loves. Clara closed her eyes, remembering Julian's words from weeks ago. There is no burden that I cannot and will not carry for you. Maybe it was time to allow him to prove that. All right, she said finally. Let's end this. Melissa began to explain the plan. Julian's press conference would be the perfect stage to expose everything. But first, Clara needed to reach him without Eleanor knowing. And that meant entering the hotel where it all had begun, facing the judgmental stares, and risking everything in one last gamble. The final game was about to begin, and this time Clara wouldn't run. Clara entered the plaza at 7 in the morning, an hour before the press conference that Julian had scheduled. Melissa and Charles were waiting for her at the employee entrance, along with Patricia and 2 other women who had been victims of Eleanor's manipulations. He's been in the office since last night, Charles informed them as they went up in the service elevator. He hasn't slept, hasn't eaten. He's preparing everything to expose his mother publicly. Clara's heart was beating erratically. It would be the first time she had seen Julian since that terrible day 2 weeks ago. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, she hesitated. It's going to be all right, Melissa encouraged her. Remember, you're on the same side now. Clara knocked softly on the office door. Julian? The voice that answered was hoarse with exhaustion. Come in. Julian was standing before the panoramic window, still wearing the rumpled suit from the day before. When he turned around and saw her, his face transformed. Relief, pain, love, and hope mingled in his expression. Clara, he whispered, as if he didn't believe that she was there. I found out the truth about your mother, she said, keeping her distance but unable to hide the emotion in her voice. Melissa showed me everything, the contracts, the other women, how she manipulated our situation. Julian closed his eyes, guilt plastered on his face. I should have realized it before. Years of destroyed relationships, of women who suddenly rejected me or used me. I thought it was my destiny. It wasn't your fault. She's very good at what she does. But you paid the price, he approached slowly. Because of my blindness, you were humiliated, blackmailed, forced to give up everything that mattered. Clara felt the tears threatening. Julian, No. He raised his hand. Let me speak first. I love you, Clara. I love your strength, your dignity, the way you take care of those you love. I love how you see beauty in the little things, how you turn any place into a home. I love that you challenge me, make me want to be better. The words that Clara had dreamed of hearing now came out with an intensity that left her breathless. During these 2 weeks, Julian continued, I realized that all my successes mean nothing without you. The money, the power, the empire, everything is empty if I can't share it with the person I love. And I love you too, Clara admitted, finally allowing the barriers to fall. More than I thought it was possible to love someone. But Julian, the real problems still exist. Your family, society, the differences between our worlds. Then let's face them together. He took her hands, not as CEO and employee, but as equals, as partners. Before Clara could answer, the door opened violently. Eleanor Thorne entered like a fury, followed by 2 security guards. So it's true, she said, her face contorted with rage. You brought this person back. Mom, Julian positioned himself protectively in front of Clara. You're here just in time. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. And you, she pointed to Clara, violated a legal contract. My lawyers are already preparing the actions. Your lawyers are going to be very busy. Melissa entered the room, followed by the other women. Eleanor Thorne, I'm Melissa Hayes from the National Journal. We have evidence of a systematic pattern of harassment, blackmail, and manipulation against employees of this company. Eleanor paled, but quickly regained her composure. I don't know what you're talking about. We know everything, Mom, Julian said, his voice filled with disappointment. "The fake contracts, the bribes, the smear campaigns. 7 women in the last 5 years, all removed from my life through your methods." "I did it to protect you," Eleanor exploded. "These women only wanted your money. They didn't love you." "How can you know?" Julian shouted back. "You never gave me the chance to find out. You destroyed any possibility of me having a real, genuine relationship." Clara watched mother and son confront each other, seeing years of hurt and control unraveling. "And Clara," Julian continued, "what could she possibly want from me besides money, Mom? She rejected my help multiple times, worked 2 jobs to support her family, abandoned her dreams for others. But you transformed her into a gold digger in everyone's mind." Eleanor looked around, realizing that she was surrounded. "Julian, you don't understand. Without control, without planning, everything we built can collapse. No, Mom, without love, without trust, without real relationships, it already collapsed a long time ago." Melissa approached. "Mrs. Thorne, we have witnesses, documents, recordings. The press conference starts in 15 minutes. You can cooperate voluntarily or await the legal consequences." Eleanor looked at Julian one last time, seeing that she had definitively lost control over her son. Without saying anything else, she left the room, followed by the security guards. The press conference was a historic event. Julian, hand in hand with Clara, publicly exposed the entire manipulation scheme. He announced complete changes in the company's management, created an assistance fund for the victims of his mother's actions, and issued public apologies to all the women harmed. "Some people say that love has no social class," Julian declared to the cameras. "Misini. I say that true love transcends any barrier that society tries to impose. Clara Miller is not only the woman I love, she is the person who taught me the true meaning of strength, dignity, and sacrifice." When reporters asked about the future of the relationship, Clara took the microphone. "For a long time, I believed that I wasn't worthy of Julian's love," she said, her voice firm and clear. "But I learned that dignity doesn't come from the money you have or the social class you were born into. It comes from how you treat people, from the sacrifices you make for love, from the courage to fight for what you believe in." 6 months later, Clara was at the altar of the small church in Queens, wearing a simple but elegant dress that she had chosen herself. Julian had insisted that the wedding be in her community, surrounded by the people who really mattered. Donna Miller, completely recovered, was crying with joy in the first row. Ryan, now studying business administration with a scholarship created by the foundation that Julian had established, was the best man. Ashley, studying medicine, was the maid of honor. "You have become my family," Julian had said to them. "Clara is not just joining my world. We are creating a new world together." The company thrived under the new, more humanized management that they implemented. Clara had returned to her studies, finishing architecture, and now worked redesigning the spaces of the hotels to be more welcoming and inclusive. Eleanor, after facing the legal consequences of her actions, had moved to Europe. The relationship with Julian remained cold, but he hadn't lost hope that one day she would understand that she had controlled him out of fear, not out of love. "Do you regret anything?" Clara asked Julian during their honeymoon as they walked along the beach in the Hamptons at sunset. "Not fighting for you from the first day," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Letting fear and the expectations of others almost separate us forever." "But maybe we needed to go through all that," Clara reflected, "to learn that true love is not something that happens despite the differences, but because of how those differences complete us." Julian smiled, remembering the first time he saw her arranging flowers with such care. "The maid who felt invisible became the most important woman in my life. And the CEO who thought he was destined for loneliness discovered that love was right in front of him. Disguised as a navy blue uniform, they laughed together, walking hand in hand along the same beach where it all had begun. Now, however, they were no longer the solitary tycoon and the insecure maid. They were Julian and Clara, Two people who had found in each other not only love, but the courage to be truly happy. Their story had proven that sometimes fairy tales don't begin in castles or elegant balls. Sometimes they begin in hotel hallways, with shy glances and carefully arranged flowers. And when love is true, not all the power in the world is capable of stopping it.